Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about how to pitch. No, I'm joking. Uh, I'm an AI designer at People Can Fly, and I'm going to talk a little bit about AI prototyping. Don't worry, I made this very accessible, and I'm sure there are a lot of takeaways that can apply to a lot of other fields. So first of all, what do I do? Well, my role, if I had to define it very briefly, would be that I design the behavior and the abilities of non-playable characters, whether they're your friends, your enemies, neutral, whatever, and how they fit in the gameplay. I work on an upcoming AAA title. I'm in a small AI design cell of 5 people, but I also work in a much bigger AI team with like 30 people, with people making sounds, animations, programmers, VFX, whatever. We're really having a lot of fun. On the daily basis, I'd say I make 20% of my time is for GDDs. 10% of my time is to do meetings, play tests, pitching, and then most of my time is doing prototyping, and that's what I'd love to talk to you about. What is prototyping? Very briefly, it can be in engine or in paper, but I'm going to talk about the in engine prototyping. It's just building the example of a mechanic to test its gameplay. I think good prototyping should be relatively fast to implement, very cheap to do, so you shouldn't be dependent on that many people, on that many different technologies, and you always have a lesson to learn from it, meaning that whether it makes it into the game or not, it's still a viable prototype. What you search in a prototype is not if it's in the final game, it's like what are the takeaways from it. Let's talk. Oh yeah, but first, before going into AI prototyping, we need to talk about AI philosophy. So rule number one, a robot may not injure a human being. No, that's not it. Uh, so yeah, if I had to compile 3 homemade rules to make a good AI, a good NPC, it'd be, first of all, the red thing is bad, the green thing is good. So AIs are not meant to be super smart. I'd say you want to have them like 90% predictable. Obviously, you can play with this number, but it's to creating that kind of loop that the player can understand that you're going to create the fun. And it's through these 10 remaining percent of unpredictability that you're going to add the little spice, which is going to make that NPC interesting. NPCs, AIs shouldn't mirror players. What I mean by that is that they shouldn't have all the same abilities, behaviors. Obviously, I had a little star. That's obviously if they're bots in a PvP game, it doesn't apply. But usually, for any other kind of game, I think that NPCs work better when they have a simple role. When it's to encourage the player to do like a certain play style, or to encourage the player to do a certain action or whatever mechanic. And last but not least, sometimes people see NPCs are as a very different thing, and they're unique in games. They should be treated differently. But from my point of view, when you really rationalize game design, they're just like any other system. The only difference is that they have an appearance, and usually they have hands and stuff. So to me, AIs are more like a personified system. They look like they're different, but actually they're not, and they're just one other tool to make your gameplay loops. In one little sentence, I say that AI philosophy in games should be about promoting player gameplay. It's really about encouraging the player to use actions rather than making like a super smart AI that's better than everyone in the independent world. Like NPCs, for example, in a FIFA, it's not about this, superstar player that you want. It's more about that AI making that smart ball call so that you can make a long pass, and you're encouraged to do that mechanic. In Halo, for example, I know someone loves Halo here. Well, the elite is like that super strong soldier, but at the same time, you know that it's gonna roll, and so it's about predicting, anticipating that roll to, rather than shooting directly at it, throw a projectile where it's gonna roll, where it's gonna head. In Need for Speed, for example, it's always it's not always about making the fastest driver, but when you have teammates with you, sometimes they can be in front of you just so you can draft and be faster. And that's to encourage you to use that mechanic. So it's not just about making them like better than you. So now that you know a little bit more about my AI philosophy, I'd like to showcase 5 takeaways that apply to AI prototyping, and I hope you find some of these useful. First of all, you should think of them as a function. Don't focus on the character when you do the prototype of an AI. Focus on what it does, meaning it doesn't matter if the abilities or the behaviors that you're going to prototype end up on other NPCs. They might be kept for later, they might be disregarded, and that's still okay. What you need to do is to list the functions you want to prototype and questions before prototyping them. And these are the questions that you're going to answer. Does my ability do that? Yes and no. Or you can add variations, but that's really the kind of mindset that you should head into, not trying to make like the demo of the entire character. Number 2, don't explain. First of all, you need to define the audience of your prototype, meaning to who you're going to show that recording of the prototype. And what I recommend is defining within your team, within the whole production, like your inner group and your outer group. Your inner group is basically going to be all the people you work with very closely, your manager, like a few technical stakeholders, and you're going to explain to them what you want to do, and you're going to make a few iterations. They're going to give you feedback and even suggestions, and with them you can explain everything. But that outer group, which is mainly going to be, the people that really make the final decisions, like the directors, the publisher, etc., you shouldn't really explain everything. You just have to make sure that when the recording of the prototype is good enough, understandable on its own without you speaking, you show it to them, and only then you show it. You don't need to show every single step of the prototype, because else they're going to have kind of a bias, and you don't know anymore if the prototype is understandable or not. So yeah, involve your inner group early on. It's going to be very helpful, and people are truly going to feel blessed to help you, and use that kind of show don't tell mentality for your outer group. Number 3, which is going to help the previous point, is to sign everything. I mean, add sign in feedback everywhere. So what I recommend doing for this is to build an assets library over time. So mainly, for example, in my case, I have an assets library with VFX, SFX, animations, and I'm going to talk early with their owners, and I'm going to ask if we can have tunable parameters. It might seem costly at first, but when you have them, first of all, they're going to be more in control, and then you're going to require less of their time, and every new prototype you make is not going to need new assets. So that's really handy. And if you cannot have these assets, you can always duplicate what's existing and chop them up, slow them down, tune things. But usually having an assets library really helps. My 4th tip is to isolate, then integrate. So meaning that NPCs, obviously, they're part of a whole, but first you need to find what they bring individually to the table. Here is, like Mario, for example, in the white box. And I've always heard this legend where, they prototype they prototype the controls as good as possible in a white box where there's there's anything, and they wait for it to be fun on its own before putting it in the level. And you should really have the same kind of mentality where it's just your character, your playable character, and the AI, and you double check that first, and then you place that AI in a real level alone to check how it's gonna interact with the environment, and then you add other NPCs as well. And the last tip I have, which is more like the cherry on the cake, once you've done everything else, it kind of breaks all the other rules, but that's the little thing. It's to make them relatable. So once everything before has been done, add this little flavor of soul, that little pause in between their actions, that little animation when they fail and they get angry, that little voice line when they see you, because it's all gonna make them more relatable and or understandable to the audience, and that's really what's going to make your prototype stand out. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much, and yeah, love this talk.